What's up, boys and girls? This is Spit Logic, and today we are going to talk about the evolution of patterns. What has happened since this 3.0 update on the SP4 for Mark II, and how does that change the way that I conduct my beat making? So this is going to be a tutorial from the very beginning to the end. Might be a long one, so let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, what you want to do is you want to start a new project. So typically when you turn on your SP4 for Mark II, it will go into a project. But for the purposes here, we're going to just start a new one. So you're going to hit that shift button right here and then your sub pad. And you see when you hold down that shift button, essentially all these buttons have a statement right under each of the pads. That is what the shift button activates. So holding down shift and sub pad, you see under here project, and you'll go into your project menu. See right here, it'll say to select, and you see across these different pads, some that are lit, some that are dim, and one that is blinking. The ones that are lit up, these are projects that potentially have audio already in them, so they are considered active projects. The ones that are dim are empty ones, which means there's no audio in any of these projects. And then this one here that is blinking, that is the current project that you're in. So for the purposes of this, we're going to go to an empty one. We're going to start with project 4. And as you can see right here on project 4, it is blank. There's nothing in any of the pads. None of the pads here are lit up. So now that we're in our project, we're going to start to build the materials that we're going to use in order to build our song. So what that is going to consist of is essentially us pulling in a sample. I'm going to be pulling a sample from a record from an external source. And right up here at the top of the SP4 for Mark II, there are two 1/4 phono inputs. I have my phono inputs from my turntable into my SP4 for Mark II. So in order for that audio to come in and in order to listen to that audio, you have to ensure that the external source is being input through it. So this button right here, external source, when you push that button, it'll light up. And now the audio that is coming from your external source, you'll be able to hear it through the SP4 for Mark II. So for example, I'm going to start playing the record. And you hear it. When I push this button, you won't hear it anymore. So ensure that this button is pushed and that the light is lit up as you're trying to play audio to ensure that audio is going through it. Now, in addition to that, there are a couple of things that you can do, a couple of parameters that you can change or manipulate based on how you want to take in audio into your SP4 for Mark II. So we're going to go over those real quick. So number one, I would go into the effects settings. That's one way to look at how you want to input audio. So again, shift, your good buddy shift, you're going to hold down shift and you're going to go to pad 16 or effects settings. So you push that and you have about 5 tabs under effects settings. This really deals with effects, but under tab 5, you'll see 5 of 5. This is where you're going to go into some of the settings when it comes to inputs. So you see right here, input effect, input bus, and dry routing. We're going to go kind of over these 3 really quick. So with the input effect, this allows you the opportunity to change the effects on your inputs as you're recording it in. So it will affect the audio that you bring into your SP4 for Mark II. So for example, I'm going to play the audio again on the record. And when you push the enter button here, it'll light up and you can scroll and you'll have different effects on the actual audio coming in. This is what your audio is going to sound like when you record it based on the effect that you choose to have on here. The second way and means that you can deal with effects on your SP404 Mark II is the input bus and through the dry routing. So with input bus and the SP404 Mark II, it has 4 bus on it, or 4 different types of effects that you can put in. For the input bus, this will ask you only between bus 1 and bus 2, which means the effects that are found here, which effects you want to add to any audio that you input. So you can add those effects as you record the audio in real time. You cannot manipulate it from this menu. You have to get out of this menu and actually put in that effect in either bus 1 or bus 2 on your SP404 Mark II. We're not going to get into effects right now, but this is just for note. The last parameter on here is for dry routing. Now this also affects it, but it can only go to bus 3. So bus 1 and bus 2 for the input bus, and the dry routing part for bus 3. So you essentially have the ability to add 3 layers of effects on your audio as you input it, if you need it, if you require it. So for the purposes of this video and what I typically end up doing, for my input effect, I go to the compressor. I just want to add a little bit more oomph to the audio as I bring it into my SP404 Mark II. So now that we've talked about just kind of the utility of the SP404 Mark II, let's go specifically to the input settings and make some changes to that. So to go to your input settings, you hold down Shift again, and that external source button you see right under here, input settings, you push that, and now you are in the settings specifically for things that you input externally on the Mark II. Now, these knobs at the top are going to typically control a lot of the different parameters on here. And this knob right here, as you can see, it corresponds pretty much in sequence of the 3 parameters at the top. So this will set your recording BPM. Essentially, if you're recording at a certain tempo, it will record it, but you can also, once you get the audio input in there, you can still change the BPMs on your overall project. Now, when it comes to routing, and it's between 2 parameters, there's mix and there's external in. Now, with mix as your parameter, that means that whatever you input from externally and any internal audio that you manipulate while you're recording, it will record the external source as well as the internal audio that you're utilizing on the SP404 Mark II. So if I play a record and let's say I want to just play around with drums while I'm recording it, it will record the drums as well as the external source. If you go to external input, that means that only the external inputs will be recorded when you press record on your Mark II. So I can be manipulating things on my pad in the project and it won't pick it up. It will only pick up what is on the vinyl or whatever your external source is. 2 more parameters here. The level, essentially that is how loud or how much of the input comes in. I just typically max that out. And then the last parameter that you want to look at, you see that input FX right there that is highlighted. So if I hit the enter button, now we go into where we had the compressor that was selected earlier under the effects setting. So this allows you to go through those parameters and you can manipulate those parameters to fit what you need. It's a good idea to kind of listen to your vinyl, listen to your external source, and you can make those choices on how you want that audio to sound and manipulate it. And you can even change what you want to go with as you're listening to it right now. Now, one more consideration when you use an external source and you're about to record into your vinyl. You can do a couple of things. You can have a few ways in which the vinyl is actually going to record, and that's based on if you have a count end or if you're going to have the vinyl automatically detect the audio, or you can manually just push record on your vinyl record. And that's kind of where that BPM setting comes in. So if you hold down your shift button and then pad 10, which is a count in, I hold shift and hit it, you'll see count in off, 1 measure, 2 measure. Those are, and then count in wait. So those are your four different parameters. With count in wait, that is when it's going to wait for a particular audio threshold before it starts automatically recording. And then 1 measure or 2 measure is going to count down before it starts recording. And then with the count in off, it will be recording as you push the record button to manually start it. So you can just keep in mind those separate parameters. For this, I typically do the count in wait. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, just because my vinyl sometimes is very low the way I like it, but we're going to stick with count in wait for this video. So now you're ready to actually record your external source into your SP4 Mark II. So I'm going to hit record, and I'm going to go into a no count in for the recording. And essentially, after you hit that record button, you're going to see all of these panels light up. They're going to blink. These are all empty pads that you can record into. When it comes to my main audio that I'm recording into, I always go with bank A, pad 1, and that's what I'm going to record into. And since I don't have it as a count in, when I hit the pad that I want to record into it, it's going to automatically start recording. So I hit pad 1, and you see right there, it says recording, and it's recording right now. So right now, there's not any audio coming in, but don't worry about that. There's a fix for that once you get started. So we're going to start recording our external audio into the Mark II. Now, once you've finished recording, make sure you hit the record button again in order to stop it. And it says record complete. And now you see on your bank, you have one of your pads that's lit up, and that is your original audio that you just recorded externally, saved on your Mark II. So let's go into this audio file that you have before we go into chop mode. You can hit the button right here, and you see it was because of that time that I waited before I actually started dealing with the audio, and it takes it a while before it even starts. So if I hit the start in button, it's going to show a visual representation of the audio that I just recorded. And you can see there's a significant gap between when the audio started as well as after the audio has stopped. So what you can do is you can manipulate and kind of trim all of the silent portions at the beginning and the end of your audio. If you look up here at the top, it says start, off, and end. It corresponds with these three knobs, these three control knobs here on your Mark II. So this knob right here, this is going to control where the start of it begins, and this knob right here is going to control the end. This one does not have a function, at least not yet. So even though you can see the start and end from this angle, if you want to get really fine-tuned into how much closer you want to actually see or manipulate the start and the end of the audio, you can use this inner knob right here, and it will zoom in for you. So as I'm turning the knob, I'm getting closer, and it depends on which one of these, the start and the end, that you've manipulated. So if I manipulate the start and I zoom in, it will start zooming in to where that start is located. And as you can see, as I zoom in a little bit more, You can get a little bit more refined and continue to zoom in. This thing can get pretty deep, pretty close in its zooming. And then now I hit it and it's right at the beginning. I can even take that little portion off right there and just go right to the first note. Same with the end. And one thing about the end of the audio, so a lot of times, so you hit this and of course you start at the beginning, but what about if your audio is kind of long and you want to just listen to what it sounds like towards the end? This button right here, this roll button, this brings you to the end, towards the end of the audio, so you can listen to when it tapers off. And as you can see right there, that was the end of the audio. So now that we've determined what the front end and the back end of this audio is going to look like, if you push the enter button, your menu is going to come up and you're going to have the ability to truncate it. Truncate it is going to cut off those two places where we manipulated where the start and end of the audio is going to be. So I'm going to push enter. And now when I zoom out, you can see that there's no trail at the beginning. There's no silence at the beginning of the audio. The audio starts right where it starts and it ends where it is. There's no space in between it. So now that you have your audio set, we are ready to start chopping our sample up in order to start making music. So right now you have your sample right here and you want to go into chop mode. So to simply go into chop mode, you're going to hold down the shift button and that start end button underneath, you see it says chop. So shift and you're right now in chop mode. And it looks similar to when you just push start in, where you can see a visual representation of the audio, but there are a few distinct differences when you go into chop mode. Think of chop mode as kind of a temporary storage where you are manipulating the sample in a place where it is not necessarily saved, and you are going to chop it and then actually save it on your SP4 Mark II. You are in a different space on your Mark II when you're in chop mode. So there are a few different ways that you can actually chop your audio. You can do it manually, which I prefer to do for the most part, but then you also have the option of doing it automatically and having the Mark II chop up a sample for you. Now, one of those ways, or a couple of those ways, first, you're going to push the enter button while you're in chop mode, and you see it has auto mark as the top selection. So I'm going to hit auto mark, and you have a few different ways of doing this automatically. The first type is the time division. And if you look at time division as, let's say it's fractional, the way that you do it based on your parameters, which is manipulated by C3, this is how many segments it will automatically chop your sample into. So if it's on the number 9, then it will chop your sample into 9 evenly spaced out portions. It'll go 9 times. And of course, you see right here, 16 is the highest number of chops you can do, because in chop mode, you can only mark as many pads as you have in a single bank. The other mode right here is the level mode. And this level mode is based on a scale of 1 to 10 volumetrically, which portion of it do you want it to be marked at. So if you want it marked at the lowest level of the audio, or the mid level of the audio, or the highest level of the audio, it will analyze the audio file and it will find those points that are similar at that level, and it will mark them at those points. The transient, which is a little bit different from the level, is where those changes, where those significant changes occur in your audio file. So transient, you can do hard, soft, and mid. It analyzes the audio and it determines if where that change in the volume is where that the SP4 Mark II is going to actually mark something different on the audio file. So when it comes to chopping, the only auto mark that I ever use is the time division one. And that's if I record an entire song and I want to make it into bite-sized pieces and just kind of chop different segments of a song. Because, with most songs there, like a beginning, a bridge, and an end, and certain different elements, some things change up on it. I like to kind of chop it up in that manner and then take those different time division stamps before I chop those different segments of a song. But since I only did a small portion of it, we're just going to do this manually. So you'll hit escape to get out of it and hit cancel, or you can hit escape to get out of the menu. And then the moment you push pad number 1, it is going to start playing the audio, and where you push the next pad, when you push the next pad, is where it will mark it automatically. So pad 1 is going to be your first mark on your audio. This is the one pad, the one mark that you're not going to be able to manipulate. It always starts at the very beginning. And when you hit the pad, the audio is going to start playing, and when you hit the next pad is where it's going to mark as the audio is playing. For example, so as you saw right there, I didn't necessarily hit the mark exactly where I needed to on the audio, not the place where I wanted it to be. And this is where these knobs at the top come into play. You can manipulate and change exactly where that different mark is for your audio. So for example, Mark II. And again, I guess just out of habit, when I hit that different mark, you can also zoom in and it will zoom in to exactly where that mark is located. And I guess since we're here, we can just kind of go over between what these different knobs necessarily can do. We already went over knob 1, but for knob number 2, this will move your actual mark. So if I hit it right here, I can change where that mark is located. And of course, you see right here, the one that is lit up in white is the current mark that I'm on. Now, if I want to scroll through all 16 of these marks, I will use Control Knob 3, and that will change where those marks are, which mark I am on the Mark II. Another way that you can get to those different marks, of course, is hitting it. But even as I turn the knob here, you can see that it will correspond with the different pad that is lit up here on the Mark II. Now, let's say, for instance, I am not a fan of where I have a couple of these marks here. So these 4 marks at the bottom, I'm not a fan of them. I want to get rid of those 4 marks. All you have to do is when you hit the button of where that mark is and you see it lit up, if you hit the delete button, that will delete that mark. You see now there is a space in between. What that also does is it creates an open space, an open pad for you to put another mark in for your audio. So we're going to get rid of all 4 of these at the bottom. And we're going to decide, hey, I want to do this in a different portion of this audio. And I know somewhere towards the end is exactly the place where I want to go. That's where this knob right here for the cursor moving goes. If you manipulate this, you can go forward in the audio And then in order to manually mark it prior to it actually playing, you just hit that mark button and it will create another mark for you. So after you have created where you want all your marks to be and you know that you have them on your pad, the next thing is to transport them. Remember, you're in a temporary location to transport them back onto your actual project. So what you're going to do is you're going to push enter, the menu button, and you're going to scroll down to assign to pad. Push the enter button a second time, and now you are back in your project, and it is asking you, where do you want to place each of those marks, each of those little sample tidbits that you have in which pad. And you see right up here, it has mark 1 of 16, and that is where you're going to place them into your mark 2, into your project or whatever bank you want to go with. So after I have done the different chops, what I typically do, if bank A is where the raw materials are, bank B is the first place where I end up putting most of my chop samples. So from 1 to 16, as you hit those pads, it is going to take it to those places where you want it to go. So as you can see it going through as I'm placing it on it. So now that I have them on here, the only thing that's left for me, I'll push enter, and that will put all 16 of those samples into each of the pads. So now that we have created what our samples are going to be, our primary samples are going to be, the next thing that I like to do is really just kind of refine all the samples together so that I can use them when I start making my patterns for my song. So right now, as they are right now, you see right here where that gate is lit up. So as a sample itself, I have to hold it down in order for the sound to continue to go through. When I push this button and take it off, it'll play all the way through. One problem that you may run into, being that you have all these different samples, some of them can be different lengths, some of them can be different sounds and textures. You can run into the potential problem of playing them and accidentally having them overlap with each other. And that overlap, I don't like to do that. I like my samples to go just one after the other sequentially, unless I'm using a separate bank or purposely trying to utilize a sample over another sample. But what you can do in order to avoid that is to make those mute groups. And what a mute group is that instead of it being able to play simultaneously together, it will automatically stop once you press the other sample, once you press the other pad. So let's put this entire bank here into a mute group. Now to go into mute group mode, you're going to hold down shift and you're going to use pad 8, or under here you see mute group. So shift and pad 8 and you see the mute group menu. Since I am on bank B, I like to correspond my mute group with the bank that I'm in. You can do that as well, but it's a person's prerogative, but it helps me to have an understanding and memorization of what's going on. So as you just press the pads and you see they're lighting up and they're also blinking. This is showing you that this is the mute group that this group of samples belongs to. And then right here under the pad menu, you can see all of the mute groups listed out, B1, 2, all the way to 16. Now, on another note, let's say you did want to use some pads on here for one mute group and some pads on another mute group. You have to take them out of this mute group, and then I will bring these to C. And you see they are a different color. Like I said before, this is corresponding what that color is a separate mute group. So now you have two separate mute groups in a single bank, but we're not going to keep it there. we're going to keep these in bank B. All you have to do is push exit, and now they are all in the same mute group. So as before, when they would overlap, now the moment I press another pad, it automatically stops the other sample. There's also a thing where, you know how this pad, we took the gate off. I want the gate off for every one of the samples in my bank. So a very quick shortcut that you can do, again, you hold down the shift and you hold down the gate button, and it'll do it for whatever bank you're in. So now the entire bank, the gate is off to where you only have to push it once and the sample will play all the way through. That mixed with the mute group now means it's one push and they don't overlap with each other. So before we get into the actual sequencing of the samples, one thing that I like to do is I like to manipulate the pitch and the speed of the sample. Specifically, I like to slow it down. Just something about the way that it sounds, the warmness of it when you slow it down is just very appealing to me. So in order to do that, you're gonna hit the pitch speed button. So if I push it, and you're gonna come up with another menu. And these three knobs kind of correspond with each sample that you're automatically on. So we'll go with sample 3. And you can manipulate the pitch and speed or speed in one of two ways. This middle knob will do it in increments. So you see the -4, -5, it goes all the way down to -12 and all the way up to +7. So it is doing it in increments. And maybe you can say this is a 19 step for your pitch. And between the 19 steps, if it was cut evenly into 19 pieces, these are the increments that it goes up and down. The speed portion of it is a little bit more similar to how a turntable is, and you can literally just manipulate the speed by turning that dial back and forth. Now, you see how it has the 98.0 on here. And if you go with the pitch, it'll be at the decimal point, but you can refine how you do the speed on here if you hold the shift button and you turn the knob at the same time. So between 0 and 9, that is going to be between 1 and 9, that is going to be the different increments in that percentage, in that decimal point. So if I hold shift, I'm at 94 right now. You see right now it is a slower turn, with 0 being at the bottom and 9 really all the way up to the next decimal point being at 0. There's some other things that you can do with the speed and pitch, but we're not going to get into that right now. What I love doing is taking it to -4. That is pretty much my default when I am slowing my samples down, and you can hear it. As opposed to right here. Now, you can do one of two things with this. You can do each sample individually and turn it down, or now that you have all of these samples in a single mute group, when you hold the copy button, it'll do it to the entire mute group. So now, this one is at -4. This one speeds up. If I hit copy and bring it to -4, now all of my samples are at -4. Same way if I bring it up, all my samples are at 0. Okay, so initially and by default, the project is set at 90 beats per minute, but we've done some manipulation with the samples itself. So maybe that those beats per minute has changed. Maybe there's some nuance to it. If you want to change what the beats per minute are, the way that I do it, the best way I think in my opinion is to kind of do the tap tempo feature here on the SP44 Mark II. So we're going to go back to shift, hold down the shift button, and pad 11 or tap tempo you see right here. So I hold it down and we go to the tap tempo mode. And you see you have kind of two options right here. You can set the BPMs for the bank, or you can set the BPMs for the project. And using this knob here at the top, this first control knob, you can switch between the two. And what I typically do is I'll play the sample, just play a couple of samples, kind of almost as if I was creating a pattern. And the sub pad right here, as you tap the sub pad, it will correspond with what it considers the BPMs that you're inputting. So for example, you see it right here, 90 BPMs right now. If I tap it quickly, you see the BPMs will go up. And even as I slow it down, the BPMs go slower. So now that you have your tempo kind of set by your tap, another thing that you could do is you could manually change what you want that tempo to be by using the inner knob. The inner knob controls that tempo. So we're at 77, 78. Maybe you want to just try 77, or maybe you want to go to 79, but you have that option by manually putting it in by using the inner knob. So now we're finally ready to start creating our first pattern on the SP44 Mark II. What I end up doing, basically after listening to the different samples, I make a determination of what the potential drum kit that I want to use is going to sound like. So I go back to bank A being kind of where I have all my raw materials. This is where I'm going to put my drum kit on my bank. So in order to take samples, and we're instead of recording externally a drum kit, we're going to take some drum one shots from internally on our SD card on the SP44 Mark II. So in order to do that, you're going to hold down shift again, and then you're going to hit pad 14, import export on your SP44 Mark II. The menu is going to come up. You're going to have a few options here. Essentially, any SD card that you put in the Mark II, you're going to have to format, but we're going to go to import from SD card and push enter. Now, of course, initially it pauses just a little bit, just because I believe it's just probably double checking to make sure it can read off of the SD card. But once you've done it once in a single session, it goes pretty smoothly. And in this case, we are going to go to a sample. So I'm going to go into my sample. This is my go-to kit, the Burrow Records one. And one thing that has changed on the SP44 Mark II, before you had to push the sub pad in order to listen to any of the samples that you wanted to import from your SD card. Now it automatically plays it as you scroll through it, thanks to that 3.0 update. So we'll just find a hi-hat. I usually put my hi-hats on pad 15. And in order to bring that sample onto the pad that you want, you see how I pressed it and it's not blinking anymore. It's solid. That means it is ready and ready to be armed by the sample that you want to place in that particular spot. So all you have to do in order to place the sample in there, you just push the enter button and it goes right into the spot. And now you see that that pad is now the same color as our original sample, which is a solid kind of dim orange color. So now you have all of your samples on here and you can play around with them. Sometimes when I'm just kind of searching for my different samples, I'll say for sure I want to use this kick. And then that causes me to kind of rehearse and see if I really want that drum to go with that particular kit. But once you have found all the samples that you want on the drum side, then you just hit the exit button and hit the exit button one more time, and you're back into your main menu. So these drums, just like any sample, they start off in gate mode. And since they're not in a mute group, I individually take them off because I don't want my percussion in a gate. I want them to be able to play all the way out, and they may overlap each other in some instances. So let's get started on our first pattern. So when it comes to patterns, the first thing that I typically record is a hi-hat, because I use that as kind of a rhythm, a holder for my rhythm. And that's where I use that foundation to kind of test out my samples and see the sequence that I want to do the samples in. So in order to start working on patterns, you want to get into pattern mode. And to get into pattern mode, you're going to push the pattern select button. So hit pattern select, and you see right there, it says pattern. So the first thing you want to do, as you can see through all these banks, there's nothing on it. We are in bank A, similar to when we were in the audio mode, but you see it's now blank. So out of pattern mode, there are samples here. In pattern mode, there's nothing here. So don't worry about overwriting anything that you have in the audio portion. This is a completely different space, so you can correspond any sort of patterns, even though you have audio in the same pads in audio mode. So in order to get ready to go into pattern mode, and you can see up here, even in this mode, it's showing what the BPMs are. So I want to record a new pattern. So I will hit the record button, and now it's asking me for which pad I want to record this new pattern on. So I'm going to go to the first pad. We'll start there, and another menu comes up. You have a menu that asks for the BPM, and it corresponds with these three knobs right here. The BPMs you wanted at, the length, how many bars, and then the strength that deals with the quantization here for the Mark II. So the length, we're going to start off with 4 bars. I like to go with 4 bars. That's a good, safe number. When it comes to quantization, I'll just keep it at the 16 pad, but the strength of it will determine, how much close to that 16th grid it stays on. I typically go between 55 and 65 when I do the strength on it. Let's just keep it at 60 since it's in the middle. And once you've made those determinations on here, and we'll go into the different modes a little bit later, but once you've made the determination on how you want to do it, and we are in real-time mode, then you're going to hit record again, and it's going to count down and give you the opportunity to record in real time what you press. So after I have this portion of it, when you hit exit, you get out of record mode, but it will still play the pattern that you have. And from this state, this is where I go about just kind of looking through my audio and seeing what the first pattern that I'm going to make is. And all you need to do while this is playing is you hit pattern select, you're back in audio mode. And from here, you can go to your different banks, bank B, for example, and kind of practice how you want to do your audio for your pattern. So I know that the sequence that I want to do with my samples, but that 4-bar pattern isn't long enough for me. I want to go with an 8-bar pattern. So what can I do in order to fit 8 bars into a 4-bar pattern? There are a couple of things that you can do, but for right now, we're going to manipulate the pattern itself. So if I go into pattern mode by hitting pattern select and I press pattern edit, so I'll press pattern edit, and since I have the one pattern here, it's going to ask me to select the pattern. I'm going to select that pattern. And now it shows kind of in space and time the length of my pattern, and I have the ability to manipulate it right here. What I want to do here is I want to double the length from a 4-bar to an 8-bar. So what you're going to do from the menu, push enter. You have a few options here. You can duplicate or you can crop the pattern. And cropping the pattern will make the pattern shorter. Duplicating it will copy and paste it right next to each other, so it'll double the length. So if I hit enter to duplicate it, now you see I'm at 8 bars, 8 measures instead of the 4 that we were at before. So now that I have the proper length for the base of my pattern, I can record into the pattern and add those samples to our baseline that we have. Now, you can do this one of two ways. One way you can do it is you can play the pattern and you have the pattern playing. When you hit that record button while it's playing, it'll wait till the end of the sequence. And then at that point, you'll be able to play patterns on there and it'll start actually recording. You see, it's telling you to wait. Now, another way that you can do that is while you're in pattern mode, if you hit record, just like you did before, and you see all of these patterns, all these potential patterns, and it's waiting for you to select a pattern. If I select pattern number 1, it's going to go back into that same menu and it's going to ask me as if we were recording a brand new pattern. It's not going to record over this. It's going to record with what you've already established and recorded with the pattern. So it's completely fine. So I'm going to hit record and then we're going to go ahead and put in our first pattern sequence. So now that I have kind of my samples and my foundation, now I want to add drums on there. So I'll play the pattern, and while it's playing, get out of pattern mode, go into audio mode by pushing the pattern select, and go back to my bank A where my drums are and just add some drums. This is where I can just practice on it. So I think I have an idea of where I want to go with it. I'm going to hit record right now. And once it finishes, I'm going to go right back into it. Now, while you're in record mode, there's another thing that you can actually do. If you hit that record button a second time while you're recording, it will go into rehearsal mode. And what rehearsal mode means is that you can play around and none of it will ever get recorded. Once you hit that record button again, then it is in recording mode. And you see the difference is with the solid record, that means it's in record mode. With the blinking record, that means it's in rehearsal mode. So now that I have my pattern made, if I want to keep certain elements, let's say the drums, for example, I want to keep those drums, but I want to lay down another sequence of patterns on it. This is one of the 3.0 updates that I think has been probably the most useful for me. So you start off by hitting the copy button while you're in pattern mode, and it's going to ask for which pad do you want to copy. So we're going to hit 1. And it's about to copy it, but then it's asking where do you want to copy it to. So let's just go to the pad right next to it. We're going to copy to pad 2. And you see up here at the top, it's showing kind of the project, the BPMs for that particular pattern. It's saying that this is the pattern that you're taking and you're copying that pattern to another pattern, right? And right under the pattern, it says P04. This is project 4 that you're taking it out of and into. So now, if I only want to take those drums and I want to take the drums from pattern 1 to pattern 2, all I need to do is hit the remain button right here. I'll hit remain, and now it's asking me to select the samples. And you notice now what we are seeing are all of the samples or all of the pads that were pressed in that pattern. So these drums, and you notice we're in bank A, this is where the drums are. You notice that pad 1 is not located on here. It's not lit up because we did not use that when we made our sample, when we made our pattern. Even if I go to bank B, it's only showing those patterns, those samples or pads that I pressed when we were making that initial pattern. So I want to just take the drums across. So I'm just going to hit the drums. You see they're lit up a little bit brighter right now. And that is exactly that's all I want to take across from pattern 1 to pattern 2. So I'll just hit the copy button a second time. And right now, all we have are the drums. And right here, our original pattern still exists. So now that we have 2 different patterns, I'm going to just show you another thing that I found very useful for the SP44 Mark II, and that is the ability to export your patterns into samples. So we're in pattern mode right now, and it's the same thing as the copy mode. So you're going to hit copy, and you're going to select which pattern you want to export into a sample. So let's go with pattern 1. And remember up at the top, it goes pattern to pattern, project 4. You are right now, if I copy this, it's going to copy the pattern on here and not export the audio. If I want to export the audio, I just hold down the shift button, and it's the same as when you're in your regular mode. To get to the audio, hit the pattern select button. So shift, pattern select, and now you see it's copying it to a sample, and you are now back in your audio mode on your SP44 Mark II. Remember, bank A has that initial sample right there, as well as those drums. And you see those are the ones that aren't lit up because those are the ones that are being utilized right now. So for the purposes of this, we'll just go to bank C, where it's all good there, and we'll bring the pattern to bank C1, and that's where we're going to copy the sample. So if I hit copy again, and now you see that the pattern is now a sample in bank C. So even if you hit start select, you'll see it manifested as an audio file. Same thing, you can do the gate. All the manipulation that you could do with those samples that we have now applies to this particular pattern. So in addition to that, right now, you can also choose which samples you want to bounce to a sample mode. So same concept, you hit copy, pick the pattern, shift, pattern select, and now we're going to decide where we want to export in our audio file. Let's go back to bank C. Let's go here, and then the remain button will let you know which are the samples you want to export over there. So let's go here, and let's just sample. Let's just take all of these across with us and hit copy again. And now you have just the sample portion, which is on as a sample right now. So there's another feature in the 3.0 update, which you can use when it comes specifically to your samples. It's called the one-shot playback feature. And essentially, so you know how we talked about the different samples before, and you could do it one of two ways. If you have the gate on, you have to hold it down the entire time for it to play. If you take it off, it'll play all the way through, but while it's playing, if I hit it again, it will stop. It will go back to the beginning. Additionally, if I have it in a mute group, then it will be cut off by the next pad, and the next pad will play. There's a third feature, that one-shot playback, and all you have to do is you hold down the enter button and you push gate on your sample. And you see right there how the gate is kind of glowing in itself. And what that feature does is that when you press the button, it will play as if the gate was off, but you're not able to start the sample again by pressing it. It will play all the way through no matter what. So even though I'm tapping it, nothing's happening. It will play all the way through. Now, this particular mode can help out, or it can be useful when you're dealing with patterns, and we're about to show exactly how that can work for you. So right now I'm back in pattern mode, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a new pattern and kind of use that one-shot playback feature and how it can be helpful in your pattern making. So we're going to hit the record button, and this time we're going to go to pad 3 to record our own pattern. We can keep it at that 2 bars, but what I want to do is go into a different mode. Instead of the real-time mode, we're going to go into the TR rec mode. So if you hit the remain button on here, now we're in TR rec mode. And essentially that is kind of the older kind of beat machine sequencer where it's not done in real time. You're just kind of hitting the pad in certain parts of the rhythm to ensure that it goes through. So we're going to go in TR rec mode. I'm going to hit record again. And right now we are in TR rec mode. Now you see right here where the sub pad is blinking. This is where you go in to find the sample that you want to play for each part of your TR rec mode. So if I hit sub pad, and you know I have my drums here, so there's my kick drum. In TR rec mode, I'll hit the kick. Another thing that I should mention is that in TR rec mode, it's a little bit different, because in TR rec mode, it seems like the 2 bars in TR rec mode is actually the 4 bars in real time mode. So just be wary of that. Be aware of that is exactly how things are going to turn out. But we're not going to do the drums in TR rec mode. What we're going to do is we're going to take that sample that's in bank C, that is in the one-shot playback mode. So that's going to be the sample that we're going to use. And we're going to go into the first portion of this, and we're going to put that sample there. And you see where the bar goes. And even though the bar has completed itself, it's still going. So how is this helpful? How can this help you? Essentially, now all I have to do is make a 2 bar, or in this case, a 4 bar beat pattern, and that beat pattern will last throughout the entirety of that sample. So we're going to go back into record mode. We're going to record, and we're going to get out of TR rec mode, right? Hit remain, and we're going to go back to real time, 2 bars, back to basics, right? I'm going to hit record again, and we're just going to record a 2 bar drum. see right now, only 2 bars of drum are playing, but the 8 bars that are in the sample are playing all the way through. So one more feature that is on the SP4 Mark II is the pad mute mode. And right now what I've done is I've copied all the patterns here. So 1, 5, 2 to 6, 3 to 7, just to kind of demonstrate what that pad mute mode or that pad mute feature is. Essentially, it gives you the ability during the progress of a pattern being played to mute those samples in real time and unmute them as necessary to create some sort of variation in your pattern. So in order to get into the pad mute mode, you have to push shift, reverse, and remain, specifically in that order in order to go in and out of the mode. You see the little M right here that signifies that you are now in pad mute mode. Additionally, shift, reverse, remain, press it again. That will take you out of pad mute mode. Now, hitting like remain, reverse, and shift, it doesn't work. Shift, remain, reverse doesn't work. But if you hit reverse first, then shift, then remain, it will still put you in pad mute mode. Now, in order to we can play it, and now that we're in pad mute mode, when I hit pattern select, you'll see now everything is white, but you can still see the different samples being played in real time. And when you press them, you can play around with different variations. Now, that's all fine and dandy, something that you can do while you're playing a pattern. But another great thing that you can actually do, if I go back into pattern mode, you can record those different variations onto the pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and go into record. And when you hit record from being in that mode, it's going to go off. That pad mute mode is going to disappear. So I'm going to hit this pattern and we're going to go into real time and we're going to hit it again. I'm going to shift, reverse, remain in pad mute mode. See, when it comes back around, it'll remember that. Now, the strange thing about this, so as I hit exit and you see it right here, it's showing that it is now playing in pad mute mode, right? Now, the interesting thing you have to remember is that this only works if you're in pad mute mode. So we've already established the recording of the pad mute mode, but when you get out of it, that M isn't there anymore. It's going to just play regular. You have to get into pad mute mode for those variations to play. So that's really all I wanted to cover in this video today. Just some of the features that I've been utilizing. There are a couple of more that I've been using, and I'm going to get into those probably in future videos. But I did want to make just kind of a all-encompassing video of the more prominent features of the 3.0 update that I use on the SP4 Mark II. I do thank you for the listen. Thank you for the view. And until next time, peace.